today. The topic is going to be triggers, which we'll get into here in a minute, but we actually do have a special guest. Brian, one of our founders, is here to jump on. I'll let him go ahead and introduce himself, and then we'll get on with our regularly scheduled office hour.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Appreciate you letting me interrupt your program here. But yeah, it's a crazy time, and the topic today could not be more relevant. I'm actually really happy that we are hopefully supporting all you guys out there with what we do with triggers as far as sales management. And wanted to take a few seconds to talk about A, how it's helped us, and B, how I hope it can help your organizations. Right now is clearly a lot of chaos, I'm sure, for you guys in our customers' world. We're dealing with the same thing here to support our customers as well as support our people, which we have people around the world right now, incidentally. But we do have the benefit of having been a primarily remote company for the last few years. We have obviously people in our offices in Tennessee, but we have people in New York, Texas, Georgia, and California as well. And, you guys out there in the world, customers, you're dealing with multi-locations. You're probably dealing with, in many cases, a first fully remote operating arrangement for some of your people right now or in the coming weeks. And so a couple things. One is I want to make sure that our CSM team, our support team are here to help you navigate what it's like to manage, maximize, coach people who are no longer down the hallway or across the aisle from you, for example. We deal with that continually. We also are going to put together a ton of content like what Jason and Michelle are doing today, which I think is super helpful and useful out of the gate for you. But at ambition.com, our resource center is going to have a ton of information. We're already posting that, and Mary's done a great job with the team of providing guides, tips, best practices to manage and coach people remotely. And ultimately, we'll continue to try to be thought leaders around this and support you both directly as customers, but also out in the community. So Michelle and Jason are going to do a great job walking through why triggers are useful today. I'll hand it off to them quickly, but give you my quick takes. I am traveling all the time. I oversee a lot of our go-to-market operations, which touches marketing, sales development, sales, and renewals. So we rely a ton on triggers. I live in a product called Slack. I'm sure some of you out there use it. I'm also continually at my inbox on email. And so we've built quite a few triggers to do three things for me here. One is anytime something significant happens, a big opportunity converts, a deal is closed won, a renewal is closed won, I want to know about it, whether I'm in the office or I'm waiting at the gate at the airport, and I want to immediately high-five that person virtually who accomplished that. When I was first a seller, we had this weird thing where there was like a sales gong physically on the manager's desk, and it was like 30 feet away through the cube farm. I had to walk over there. I hated that. And so luckily we've already supported a way to virtually ring that gong, whether it's in email with an alert, whether it's on TV, of course, whether it's in Slack. The second is you guys are probably going to face a challenge, which is you've got primarily young people in sales development positions, in account executive, inside sales positions who have maybe never worked remotely. And that's a big challenge. That's a big transition. And, Jason and Michelle will talk about it, but you as a leader are probably going to be faced with how do I keep the energy up? How do I keep these people accountable? How do I make sure that we hit our goals, which may not have changed because of the health crisis? And you're going to have some of that accountability be automated, be remote friendly, and you can't just continually be tapping people on the shoulder like you did 2 weeks ago and saying, how are you doing today? I don't hear you on the phone. Triggers can help with that. And last but not least, you've got to connect the folks around in your sales organization. Everyone's going from probably sitting a few feet away or maybe sitting in a couple pods in offices. And, the reality is now they're all at home. You don't know if they are making calls, doing demos. You don't know if they're watching Netflix. And I know this feeling. I hate that powerless feeling. I hate the feeling that when folks are having success, they're not being recognized. They're not able to share that best practice to their neighbor or to someone around them in the office. triggers are able to help that too by spawning the conversation. And so I will tee it back to Michelle and Jason. I just want everyone to know that Ambition is here to be your partner in this. We want to support you. We think we have a variety of tools that can really, specifically with triggers, help you maintain the energy, maintain the accountability, and hit those goals and objectives you have. So we're here for you. I'm here for you. And I'll toss it back over to Michelle and Jason.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, so last week, for anyone that joined, we were talking about Ambition TVs, how we use those to recognize and motivate different reps for the accomplishments that they are doing. So today's topic, we'll definitely talk a little bit about how triggers can help with that motivation. But there's a lot of other ways that we can use triggers. So, ways to proactively manage your team. So we'll be talking a little bit about that as well. And then finally, what we're going to do is we're going to have Jason jump into our Ambition instance. We'll actually have him build out a sample trigger for you all. So that'll be a good chance to kind of see live what this looks like. We will be sharing some help articles within the blog post. So if you guys need specific instructions detailed on how to build those out of the different samples, we'll share those as well. And then also just put any questions that you do have in the chat window. We did see some questions come in prior to starting the webinar, so we'll try to get to all of those as well. And if we don't have time, we'll make sure to follow up with you after this call. So with all that being said, what is an Ambition trigger? So an Ambition trigger is a data-driven push notification. We're typically using these to recognize an individual or a group for reaching a threshold or some sort of achievement. So those of you that are managing teams, we know that you're being pulled in a lot of different directions. You have a lot of different data sets. So having a way to automatically get to the information that's most important to you is what triggers is all about. So jumping to the next slide here. One of the biggest or main ways that we see people using triggers is to celebrate those wins. So as Brian mentioned, as people are going remote, we still want to be able to drive that culture and that enthusiasm around the big things that are happening, whether your teams are meeting or setting appointments, whether they're close won opportunities, or whether they set their first meeting. We want to be able to still celebrate all of those wins. Even if you don't have TVs, emails is a great way. We can, one of the notification sets that we can add to the trigger is to actually email the entire team. So if you have sales at company, we can make sure to notify everybody when there's a big closed won opportunity, things like that. So real-time record-based celebrating wins is a big way that we're using Ambition triggers. Additionally, using, next slide, Jason, using Ambition triggers for those target-based notifications. So we're using scorecards. A lot of the teams are using scorecards. So you actually do have, what is a good day? What is a good week? What is a good month in Ambition? So we're saying, 100% of activity score, that's something that we want to celebrate. You want the whole team to know that somebody's, on track. They did exactly what you asked of them. So that's a good way to use triggers. And so those are the real-time target-based. Maybe they're making 60 calls in a day, or they're 100% of their call activity. Those are the types of wins that we want to celebrate in Ambition. Similar to just celebrating those other wins, we can do those through emails. We can do this through Slack. We can do this on the TVs. But it's a really good way to recognize when people have hit that threshold, whatever that target is that we wanted them to hit. So we want to make sure that we're celebrating all of those. And the third biggest way that I see people using triggers is proactive notification. So let's say you need everybody on your team to have made 10 calls by 10 a.m. This is a super common one for your SDR, BDR teams. As a manager, as you're going remote, you may not be able to listen in on those calls. You may not be sitting there right next to your reps, realizing that they're not on the phones and not making calls. But what you can do is set up a trigger to give you a notification as a manager. So you have your list of everyone that hasn't made those 10 calls by 10 a.m. That's a great way for you to manage the effort of your team, so that you can go in, tap those reps on the shoulder if you are sitting there in person, or send them a quick Slack or quick email saying, hey, get on it. I need you, on the phones. What's holding you back this morning? That type of thing. So 10 calls by 10 a.m. is a great way to make sure that your team is on track. But it doesn't have to be calls. It can be whatever the different metric is that you're watching that you need to be proactively notified about. Another great one that I've seen is a count of weekly ops at the end of the week. So you need to see an entire list of how everyone on your team has performed. You can set the threshold to 0, so it's not going to be based on anyone that hits, a certain number, but you just want a list of everybody's ops, so you can see how did we perform as a team by the end of the week, and how did they perform individually. So we can send out a trigger with basically just a report automatically to your email, to the VP's email, whatever it is. Maybe it goes to the entire team, and we can use the sales at company name or whatever that email is. So that's another good way to kind of proactively manage your team. One cool example or thing that I've seen a team do was they said everyone that gets over a certain amount of opportunities set by the end of the week by 4 o'clock. Let's say the goal is to create 10 opportunities. Everyone that creates 10 opportunities by 4 o'clock on Friday gets to leave 30 minutes early. That can be a huge motivator for the team. They're probably not super productive from 4:30 to 5 o'clock anyway, but I think this would be a good way to drive that activity all throughout the week. But triggers, use them to kind of think outside of the box. How can we motivate our teams, keep them on track, and make sure that you as manager have the information that you need to keep your teams on track. So we'll jump to the next slide, show you a couple of examples. So this might be a new opportunities created email that's coming straight to your inbox every Friday at 4 o'clock, if that's the type of trigger that you want. This is the format that it's going to come to you in your email. So it's going to be a quick list of everybody and what they've achieved for that certain metric that you're building that trigger around. And up next, this is a TV trigger. So these are probably the ones that you're most familiar with. What we're doing is we're sending that quick flash notification up on the TV. This one is of Jason. So he hit his activity score. So we're celebrating that win as a company. So TV triggers is that other way that we're notifying and kind of recognizing that achievement. And then the Slack triggers was the other one that we mentioned. So this is great for remote teams, for people that are not in the office every day, whether you're traveling, but it's a good way to kind of keep everybody celebrating those wins. And with that, I'll go ahead, pass it off to Jason, and he's going to show you how to build out a trigger. But keep those questions coming in, and we will get to them at the end.
Thanks, Michelle. I'll go ahead and follow that up. Let me jump out of the presentation here. And now that Michelle's done a great job of explaining the different use cases for those triggers, wanted to follow that up and show you guys how to put wheels to the pavement here and how to start celebrating some of those more fun items. Or on the flip side, how to start building out some of those ways that you can proactively track the activity levels of your reps via triggers. So this is going to be familiar territory. We'll go ahead and jump into one of our sandboxes and show you guys how to build this out. So to go ahead and get into trigger setup, make sure to click on the left-hand nav here. You're going to go into the reporting section, and then you'll see triggers. From here, the first step that you're going to want to do to create any of those triggers that Michelle just went over, or to come up with a new.
Jason might have stopped sharing.
Oh,
I can't see your screen. Sorry.
That's, about as classic of a Jason move as it gets. How about now, guys?
There we go.
But you are.
Excellent. So y'all didn't miss much. Was just showing to go ahead and set up those triggers within your Ambition instance. You're going to want to rely on your left-hand nav here. Click this reporting section, and then you'll go ahead and select triggers. That's going to take you to the trigger build screen. So anything that you see here, you can go ahead and start building a new trigger by selecting create new, and we'll use that 100+ activity score as an example. So anything that you want to celebrate, make sure to name it here. Quick pro tip, I've gotten great at copy and pasting from name to description. If you need something more descriptive, feel free to include that there. The notification frequency. So real time, that's going to be a way to celebrate once reps hit a certain threshold that you want to recognize. It's going to be displayed on that screen. So for this example today, we'll go ahead and select that. The hierarchy level, a couple different things to notice here. This is where we're picking how we want that trigger to be displayed. I'd say the most common use case is going to be user to user, but let's say you want to recognize an entire team. So you're driving competition. Let's say your San Francisco team against your New York team, and you want whoever hits 5 closed deals for the week to be recognized on a TV that both of you guys are using to display some of those activity drivers. You could select team role, maybe anyone within an SDR role or a CS role, you can select that here. And then you can get creative with that, maybe a location versus location, team versus team, or even anyone within a certain grouping of managers. But we'll go ahead and grab user here. So if you wanted this as an activity driver for an entire org, we would leave that at all. But the most common use case I see here is we would select within. And then this is where you as a manager, you can select either your specific group, you and a few different managers who are going to be sharing this trigger, or maybe you just want to incorporate everyone that's in that DSR role. So we'll go ahead and select that. And then this is where we actually get into the build out of that trigger and setting up that logic. I would say reserve the advanced feature. This is more like building out a metric specifically for a trigger. So if you're feeling adventurous, I'd say reach out to your CSM and we can assist you with that advanced. But this is more like that metric builder within a trigger. But the one I always piggyback off of is using an existing metric. So using something that's already funneling into your ambition instance, like that activity score, like a calls metric. That's where we can select it here. Value or target. So let's say there's a weekly target of 5 deals closed. That's where this would be applicable, but let's just choose value for today. Time frame. So this is how long ambition is going to be searching for that overall aggregate of data. So a lot of times for things like activity score, maybe a daily call goal, that's where we see the daily use case. But we definitely understand that you're not closing, or maybe you have a demos goal where those are a little bit harder to attain, where you would want to stretch out that time frame. That's where weekly, monthly, or even something like an ARR goal, that's where quarterly or even annual would be an option. So you can stretch out that time frame where ambition is collecting that data to where once reps hit that threshold, they'll have that celebration via the trigger. But let's just do daily. We'll select activity score here. And then the operator is important for a couple reasons. Greater than and greater than or equal to, those are the most common options that people choose when they're trying to celebrate a certain threshold. But on the flip side of it, maybe this is one of those email triggers that Michelle was talking about. You can select less than or equal to use that as one of those email notifications to help with any kind of corrective action, to where, let's say a rep has less than 10 calls by 10 a.m. You as a manager, you're going to know that there's an opportunity to follow up directly with that rep and have a conversation as to, why they're not hitting certain expectations. But let's do greater than or equal to for this activity score. We'll do 100. That's going to give reps the opportunity to see their face on your ambition TV once they hit that daily activity score of a 100. Like Michelle was showing you, just to give a personal use case for this, when I know that I'm at my activities for the week and I'm about to hit that trigger, what I'm doing is I'm checking my ambition dashboard. So as a rep, I'm engaged. I'm making sure that I'm doing whatever I can to get that celebration, because I know that value is at 100 on my activity score for the week. So your reps are engaging and pacing themselves rather than me reaching out to my supervisor saying, hey, am I having a good week? Where am I at? I immediately know that I can check my dashboard. I'm about to get that trigger. My eyes are on my work. I'm looking at the TV, and I'm eager to hit that for my weekly celebration within our ambition TVs. So you establish the value for that activity score, whatever metric you've chosen here. And then the last piece, so this is how you're going to set up those different notifications. So if this is a TV, we would want to go ahead and set that. Super easy to add to TVs. We'll go ahead and pick anything that you've queued up that's within your TV setup. You should automatically be able to select that there. But I know we mentioned a couple different type of notifications. So as a manager, let's say, this isn't necessarily something that you want on the TV. You just want to be able to celebrate that specifically with the rep. That's where you can get creative in these settings here. So as a manager, let's say you have one of those less than or equal to. You want to see what reps have hit 10 calls by 10 a.m.s. That's where you could select my email address. And then maybe you want to share that with the reps too. So you could do my email address. So you as a manager, you're going to have a heads up on what reps are below a certain threshold. And then feel free to add any combination of notifications here. If you do have that Slack integration set up, similar to the TV notifications, you're going to see Slack here, and then any public channels would be accessible in this dropdown. So we'll go ahead and set this to the TV, the sales TV that we have here in my sandbox. A couple questions around setting that Anthem volume. So definitely understand you guys want to be able to tailor the experience to what's applicable to your sales floor. You know, if everyone is hitting a certain trigger every single day, or maybe there's a couple celebrations an hour, you might want to set this at 20% so it's not so loud. Here in a second, I'll show you guys where the intro sound and the Anthem override come into play. So a lot of people want to associate a certain trigger with a certain song or a certain sound. That's where this Anthem override would come into play. The intro sound exactly like what it sounds like. That would be like a gong or anything to draw attention to the TV as that intro. And then the final piece, you can get creative with the messaging here. So we have customizable messaging. So let's do great job. You can add the username via these meta fields on the right. We would do metric value. And then just a fun message here. And then one ambition pro tip that I want to share with anyone, pretty much on any page when you're ready to save the work on anything that you're building out, make sure to look for this green button in the bottom right, and then that's going to save the work that you've just done. So the next piece of this is going to be showing you how reps, once you as a manager, once you've built that trigger, you're going to want to make sure that your reps are setting up those anthems that they can recognize as their walk-up song. This is keeping reps engaged, and this is giving them skin in the game, so they have that immediate connection with the celebration. What you'll see around your office, folks are going to start getting excited about this. Reps, they're going to be looking for that attention. They're going to know where they're at on a weekly basis, and then they're going to be expecting that celebration for you know, those certain thresholds and those certain expectations you've set as a manager. So Alex here, this is going to be familiar territory for your reps. This is a rep dashboard, just using Alex here as an example. And in 3 clicks, your rep can set their video anthem. So they're going to look for the settings gear icon here in to the right of their name. What we'll do, this should pull from Salesforce if that's how you guys are integrated. So any default picture in Salesforce is going to queue up here. But if they'd like to update that, quick way to do so is within Choose File. So the fun part, setting up that anthem. Right here, my suggestion is always, you know, of course, keep these work appropriate. Hopefully your reps will stay within those guidelines, but the easiest way to navigate and to select an anthem URL is just going to be go to YouTube. Below any YouTube video, there's a link that says share. That's going to queue up a compatible URL where reps can copy and paste that. And then to test, to make sure that it's going through, they'll be able to make sure that that's firing off within their Ambition instance before they leave this setup page. So again, last thing that they'll want to make sure of, go to the bottom right, we'll save any changes, and then you'll get that confirmation that everything's good to go. Last part here, want to bring this full circle. We'll show you guys how those are used in Ambition. So let's say your reps, they've all been, you know, they've all been hitting it really hard over the course of the week. As a manager, you just introduced the concept of triggers. Everyone's fired up. Everyone's excited. What's this going to look like in Ambition? So to show you guys how this is going to fire, any reps who have their anthem set, we'll give you a quick demo. So you'll hear that gong or that intro sound. Reps see their name. and then we get into the video anthem.
Hey, Jason, can I jump in for 1 second? There's
Yeah, you bet,
something
Brian.
really important that even that example trigger, and Michelle mentioned it earlier, but so many of the roles that we manage, which are very activity focused, things like sales development, inside sales reps, that trigger that went off at 100% of a daily activity or weekly activity score, that gets really hard to manage remote. And I just want to highlight that that's a smart trigger, because it's going to become very easy to forget about the minutia. It becomes very easy to get distracted for some of us. And so you want to create that positive reinforcement, like Jason, you explained earlier, for when people are hitting all of the different metrics that are part of their day-to-day, week-to-week, top of funnel activity. That's going to be really important to drive your pipeline for 2 months, 3 months, 5 months from now. And that was a great trigger example. When someone hits 100%, it may not be a specific milestone moment like closed one deal or a new opportunity created. It's just that they've hit the target for today, if they've done all the necessity activities that they're supposed to do this week. That's really useful. I'll turn it back over to you, but I just want to highlight that specific use case.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
And Jason, one more thing too, we've had several questions come in. So I don't know if now's a good time or if you'd rather wait till the end, but we have a lot of great questions coming in as well.
Yeah, that was actually, that was perfect timing. Really the last thing that I wanted to address proactively is a couple of those additional options for tailoring that trigger experience to what makes most sense for your office. Just going to show off a couple tips and tricks. So a lot of times I feel like I have the question of, how long is this trigger? So you can set up some of those default options, just navigated to the TVs section under admin here. You can click the pencil icon, and then this is going to give you the ability to set that anthem duration, the ability to toggle on and off. And then some of you who have already set up triggers and TVs, you might be used to that default Rocky anthem. This is where you could set up that default anthem for your entire org. But that being said, yeah, I am happy to jump into some questions.
Cool. So the first one is that one of our current issues is a lot of our goals change month to month, and we currently update scorecards and goals every month. It would be nice to be able to connect a goal directly to a trigger. Do you have any thoughts around how to best scale or manage that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll comment on that first, and then curious if Michelle has any feedback. So not to my knowledge, do we have a current functionality? It would be a little bit of a manual process as we stand today. But the good news, and I can definitely follow up directly with you, Tim. Thanks for jumping on today. Let me get a little bit more info from our products team, because we're currently in the middle of a really cool project called Workflows that's going to start connecting some of those areas within Ambition to make it a little bit easier for you to connect the dots.
Yeah,
One thing about that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I was just going to say that we can.
Supposed to be here.
We always appreciate your input and you joining in, Brian. Yeah, so with goals, if you do add them to the TVs, we're going to get that progress bar. So that's kind of like, it's definitely not triggers, but I think it's giving some great visibility there. And as Mary mentioned in the chat, reps are able to add that URL if they've got 2 screens up and going. So even if they're working from home, they can pull that up and still see that trigger, those triggers going off, and they can still see the slideshow. So goals are going to be there. And then we do have automatic email notifications that go out as you hit a couple of different thresholds within the goal. But as Jason mentioned, hopefully workflows might be coming out soon, and that might give us a little bit more flexibility as far as triggers within goals.
And then a couple more questions around, some of the administration side of the trigger setup. So with the less than option, if someone wanted to create a 10 calls by 10 a.m. trigger, but the notifications go to the manager, do you manually select each manager? How do you scale that setup?
If you wanted the trigger notification to just go to the manager, you'd have to build out a different trigger for each of those manager teams. That would be the best way to manage it. Yeah, that's it.
And then one more question, kind of similar for the trigger notification. What if they want it sent to the employee? Like if, they're below a call metric midday, do they select my email address, or what is that set up?
Yes, you'd select trigger initiator. I think that's what it's, Jason, if you want to share your screen. Yeah, perfect. So the notification would be trigger initiator as opposed to your email address, because if you're selecting your email address, that is going to be you as whoever's building this trigger. So that's not what we would want. But what we do see a lot is adding both. So add trigger initiator, add yourself as the manager, so that you get that notification as well.
And just one important note, if anyone's having trouble with setup or wants a little bit more explicit step-by-step help, you can always reach us at gethelp@ambition.com. And that is a great place to get super speedy resources for help setting up things like this.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions, Mary?
I think that's it for the questions. Do you have anything else you want to close with, Brian?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. You guys did a great job. Everyone out there watching, I really appreciate it. Thanks for staying, and please let us support you in this time. We're doing the same thing. We are dealing with the same challenges that I'm sure most of you are right now. So, we are happy to help. Your CSM, our support team, our solutions team are all available to you. And, whatever we can do, feel free to reach out. Like Mary said, we are ready to work with you and make sure that as this transition happens, however long it takes, you should have the tools to be able to motivate, recognize, and keep your folks accountable. But most of all, stay safe, be smart. let's all take care of each other. And good luck out there.
And we will send this recording to everyone interested. I know that's a big ask. So we hope to see you guys not next week, but the week after on the next office hours. If you have trouble registering, reach out to Get Help at. We'll love to see you again there. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye, guys.
everyone.